driver had taken off. It was still best to check it out and leave nothing to chance. Carl needed help. Such heart-wrenching Nordic poetry that was. What could be inside that envelope? Carl was taken aback. He knew this address. It was said to be the address of the P.O. box for the Canadian Secret Service. Hate was in the air. Seems like some villagers barely tolerated each other. According to that log, it seemed like the whole village owed some money to the general store. Carl was far more interested in the bunch of nearby addresses he had just gotten his hands on, though. Carl knew that Gilles Lachance was in charge of the general store. That made him one of Hamilton's employees. A very angry employee, as Carl could plainly see. The murder weapon. What was that doing there, Carl wondered. Hamilton must have been determined to keep some information secret to post this key. Shame he got unlucky. Everything made sense now. Poor Hamilton's denunciation was interrupted. The Bedards had vacated the premises. Carl gathered they would be of no help. Shame that the family had bailed. Carl would have had a few questions for Jean-Luc, a close friend of Hamilton's. otherworldly ice had struck again. It seemed like secrecy was commonplace in this house. The vision's veil was lifted, and he was back to reality. A reality in which Gisele, Gilles' loving spouse, was motionless, frozen in ice. The general store, along with several more infrastructures in the area, had been acquired by wealthy industrialist William J. Hamilton. Perhaps the village should be rechristened Hamiltown. Carl had seen that kind of safe before. With its double-layered security system blending letters and numbers, its code couldn't be broken by the common burglar. To all appearances, this was a hunting log. Better yet, a war diary. What could these engraved numbers mean? A fresh path suddenly appeared before Carl. Carl had that feeling you get when you immerse your frozen hands in hot water. The key, which seemed to be meant for a padlock, bore an inscription reading Chez et Fils. A company name. Better keep an eye open. Businesses weren't exactly numerous around these parts. A pay stub for some undoubtedly harsh lumberjack work. Alexandre Blais felled trees and chopped woods for Chez et Fils. Welcome to Ali Baba's Cave, Lumberjack Edition. Surely Carl would find something worth his time in here. There should be a law forbidding doctors from falling sick. There was no doubt that the doctor and Hamilton knew each other very well. A communist manifesto. Only a few years ago, this type of allegiance meant prison time. The place looked more like a pigsty than a house. A heavy stench of curdled milk, cheap alcohol, and boiled cauliflower filled the air. Back then, in Africa and elsewhere, people were ready to take up arms to stand against the yoke of English imperialism. In Montreal, mailboxes were blown up, abductions were carried out.
Vois-tu le livre, là? C'est le Wendigo. Ouais, le Wendigo. Un guerrier qui devient un loup pour se venger de sa grosse peine. Et...
It seemed as though Rejean had been ready to take up arms and slay people like Hamilton. Could he have committed murder for his cause? Who could have gotten killed in front of his very eyes? Roswell, Atamipek, same story. Large deserts conducive to extravagant follies. If some daring person could manage to get their hands on the missing parts, Carl was willing to bet that the craft would have taken flight. Another worrisome victim of this ice, this one seemingly petrified in action. The poor man before being frozen solid. Something very important must have been in there for the man to take such time and effort to hide it, but Carl didn't know how to reach it. The week of October 5th, thought Carl. That was this week. The plug should have been here by now. The very first steps of man on the moon were made more than a year ago. The event had surely captivated the mechanic's mind for him to still keep this around. Carl had no idea how to interpret a message like that. Another diary. Carl felt like someone was trying to communicate with him. Or was it simply the result of happenstance? Pierre the poacher Blais was definitely not the one who lived here. Indeed, Carl learned earlier that the man had recently been shredded to death by, allegedly, beasts.